Hi, I'm Shashank Bhargav, and you're listening to Three Things, the Indian Express news show. In this episode, we will talk about 36 union ministers visiting Jammu and Kashmir for the first time since August 5th. We will also talk about neons, which are being referred to as the world's first artificial humans. But first, we talk about the Sports Authority of India, or SAI. Data obtained through RTI and official reports has revealed that in the last decade, at least 45 complaints of sexual harassment were reported at 24 different government run sports institutes. It was found that in several cases, the accused were let off leniently, and investigations into almost a dozen complaints have dragged on for years without any resolution so far. Mihir Vasavda, who broke the story, joins us to talk about it. Mihir, you filed this RTI, which reveals the number of sexual harassment complaints that have been filed in the last 10 years in government run sports institutes. And in the piece that you wrote for the paper, you begin by talking about a 2014 case that kind of illustrates this problem. Could you begin by telling our listeners what that case was about?
So in January 2014, there were these 5 trainees at Sports Authority of India's Hisar Center who filed a police complaint against their coach, accusing him of, groping them and kissing them on the pretext of the so-called World Kiss Day. Back then, they lodged a complaint at the local police station there, but soon after, the village panchayat intervened and they got them to backtrack, the girls and their families to backtrack and withdraw the complaint, and the issue was settled. Now, simultaneously, the Sports Authority of India had and its Sexual Harassment Committee were running their own investigations, and they found the charges to be true. But surprisingly, the only action they took was, and the investigation took a lot of time. It took almost 3 years for them to complete the investigation. And by the time it was concluded, the coach had retired from his services. The coach had a very shady record as well. I mean, he had some other complaints dating back to 1981 against him. And by the time this particular investigation in this particular case was completed, he had retired from his services at SAI. So the Sports Authority of India just let him off with a 10% cut in pension for 1 year. That was his punishment.
Do we see other sexual harassment cases seeing similar conclusions, a similar fate?
Oh, yeah, a lot of them. So, I mean, there was this one case from the Northeast where in one of the states over there, there was a similar thing where a group of girls, they accused their coach of touching them inappropriately on the pretext of him checking their attire and stuff. And while the athletes have to weigh in, he told them to remove their tops and all kinds of things. Again, that issue was reported at the SAI center, at the particular center, and it was SAI who then registered an FIR according to the RTI reply. Now, they suspended the coach in that case, and the court hearings are still going on. And this, we are talking about a case in 2014. So it's almost 6 years down the line, and the court hearing is still going on in that case. But it's one of the rare cases where SAI actually was proactive and took action against the coach in question. But then there are several other instances, where the coaches have merely been transferred, or like we saw as the Hisar case, that they've taken very lenient action. There's this case in Gandhinagar, Risai, in 2013, where a couple of trainees, once again, they accused their coach of sexual harassment. And SAI constituted a committee to look into it. And while the investigation till date is going on, the coach was transferred to the Sonipat Center. And Sonipat is one of the biggest centers for Sports Authority of India. We have another case, for example, from Thiruvananthapuram, where a boxing coach, he was accused by a girl of misconduct, of sexually harassing her. The coach, he was quite prominent. He had been with the women's national team as well. And he continues to be in the roster till date. He is at SAI's Aurangabad Center, where he's training around 40, 50 kids who are aged anywhere between 13 and 18.
Do we see the complaints mostly against coaches? And also, do we see this across sports?
It is across sports. Mostly, if you look at the complaints, it is mostly in contact sports like boxing, wrestling. There are a lot of cases in athletics, in weightlifting, and gymnastics as well. It's spread across India. So these cases are across 24 SAI centers spread across the length and breadth of the country. So it is not one sport specific or one state specific, so to say.
And right now we're talking about 45 complaints of sexual harassment in a span of 10 years. But I imagine these numbers, the actual numbers would be higher considering we know that most sexual harassment cases actually go unreported.
It's a parliamentary report on empowerment of women, which was submitted last February. And they noted this very point. To quote them, they said that the number could be higher, as many times cases against coaches also might have gone unreported. And they went on to add that, the committee finds it quite unfortunate that mentor and guide himself is turning into predator. So you're right, Shashank. I mean, there will be so many other cases which have gone unreported for the basic thing like the girls' fear for their careers. Like a former side Director General Gigi Thompson, he told us that a lot of girls, they do not come forward and complain or change their complaints because they fear their career might end. And for a lot of them, this is a way out of poverty.
What are the kind of measures that the Sports Authority of India, SAI, has taken, knowing all of this?
So SAI has its own sexual harassment committee, and they do have a code of conduct set for athletes, and it is there across all centers. But one thing that the parliamentary committee noted in its report was there were no sets of do's and don'ts for the coaches. And there was one glaring thing missing from the entire thing at SAI centers. With regards to action taken into the complaints, like we've discussed earlier, I mean, it has been lenient from small financial penalty to transfers. So in terms of action, there is not been satisfactory, but they do have a code of conduct for athletes at least. So one last thing that the parliamentary committee mentioned in their report is all these cases are linked to power and authority that the coaches wield. So it is a scenario where the coaches are in a position where they can make and break an athlete's career, and both parties over here are acutely aware of this. The coaches know that if they do not recommend a young athlete's name to the higher ups, to the federations, the athlete won't stand a chance to kind of break into the national team. And for this very reason, there are a lot of athletes who do not come up and report cases or change their statements after making the initial complaint. And that was one thing that Gigi Thompson, the former side DG, he said that that happens in 90% of the cases where the complaint is later withdrawn. So, from that point of view, SAI has expressed its helplessness, although they did not officially react to whatever questions we had sent to them regarding this story.
Next, we talk about Jammu and Kashmir. As part of an initiative by the Union Home Minister Amit Shah, his ministerial colleagues will be visiting Jammu and Kashmir next week. They intend to speak with local people about developmental policies and steps taken by the central government since August 5th last year, when Article 370 was abrogated and the state was bifurcated into two union territories. Naveed Iqbal, Indian Express's J&K correspondent and who broke the story, joins us on a call from Srinagar to talk about it. Naveed, you reported that 36 ministers will be visiting the valley for the first time since August 5th, when it was decided that Jammu and Kashmir's special status would be scrapped. Could you first talk about what exactly is the purpose of this visit?
So we had reported on a communique that had gone from the Union Home Ministry to the Jammu and Kashmir Chief Secretary here, stating that 36 ministers of the Union Council of Ministers will be visiting Jammu and Kashmir over the course of a week starting Monday. And this purpose, as stated in that letter, is for the ministers of the government to talk to people in Jammu as well as Kashmir about development activities, projects that are underway in both regions of the UT. This is being done on the initiative of the Home Minister, as stated in the communique.
What kind of significance does this visit have? Like, considering this is the first time that these ministers will be visiting the valley.
Right. So from what we know from government sources, earlier also, right after the revocation of special status to Jammu and Kashmir, we believe that the Home Ministry had asked its Council of Ministers to visit Kashmir and to basically carry the government's message and communicate the intent with which the government has carried out this exercise, starting with the revocation of Article 370 and 35A and splitting the state into two UTs. But at that point, it wasn't feasible and it didn't happen. But this is a massive outreach program on the part of the government, and it is being directed entirely by the Home Ministry. And it gains significance because it's the first of its kind. a massive outreach program that is being conducted in Kashmir. It matches an election campaign in its scale.
So, what do we know about who all will be visiting? What are some of the big names and how long will they be visiting for?
So there are a total of 59 visits in Jammu and Kashmir, but the majority, 51 of these, are in the Jammu area. All the ministers, right from the MOS home, G. Kishan Reddy, to General retired V.K. Singh, Kailash Chaudhary, Gajendra Singh Shekhawat, Smriti Irani, Renuka Singh, Prahlad Singh Patel. These are just some of the names. There's also Piyush Goyal is also visiting Jammu. He's visiting Akhnur area. Ravi Shankar Prasad is going to be in Baramulla and Sopore on 24th. Prahlad Joshi. Lots of names. So 36 names total and 59 visits across the state.
How have people reacted to all this since this news broke out?
It's interesting that apart from closed-door meetings and, city center meetings, or in Srinagar, there's going to be a meeting in SKICC. These union ministers are also going to be doing public events. And it's snowing in Kashmir and temperatures in the negative. So it'll be interesting to see whether people come out to attend these public meetings or not. And also, apart from Ravi Shankar Prasad, there aren't very popular names amongst the people who are visiting Kashmir, at least.
Okay. And in the end, I wanted to ask you, we last spoke at the beginning of this month, and we spoke after SMS services had been restored, and there were reports that broadband services had been made available in government hospitals. And now there were also news that, internet has been made available in other institutions, although there have been restrictions on social media. What has been the update since then?
So on January 15th, the government spokesperson announced that limited access to internet will be available. Although we've not really seen active broadband working anywhere in the city so far, apart from the media center where we file from and some of the government kiosks like in the government DC offices and such. But we've got a list of the whitelisted websites where the government is going to allow internet usage for. So these include banking websites, these include education websites, websites of universities that are operational in Kashmir, as some of the schools, passport offices, even Netflix and ESPN and Hotstar. Some of these are income tax filing websites and utility like Zomato or First Flight, DTDC, Blue Dart, stuff like this. So for now, these websites are allowed, but broadband isn't functional everywhere yet.
In the end, we talk about virtual humans. This year, at the annual Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas, which is the largest tech show in the world, among the most discussed new concepts was Neon, which is the first project of Samsung's Star Labs. Neons are being called the world's first artificial humans. Nandagopal Rajan, who writes on technology and who went to this year's Consumer Electronics Show, joins us to talk about it. Nandu, could you tell us exactly what are these virtual humans and what exactly is the concept behind them?
So calling them virtual humans or artificial humans is a bit of an oversell. What they actually is it's like a virtual human interface for whatever you want to do with technology. So the guy behind it is an Indian called Pranav Mistry. Pranav has been with Samsung for quite some time. He's the guy behind a lot of the UI UX you would see with Samsung. So what he's actually done is created a UI UX layer, which is something that we are very familiar with, and that's a human. So don't expect Neon to come onto a robo or to any other physical being or a physical form, because it's always going to be on a screen, but it's going to look like you because it's modeled after you. So it can look exactly like you or the master or whoever, or somebody you miss or somebody you love, and it's supposed to interact with you. But don't think of it as a virtual assistant. This is not a place where you would say, hey, Alexa, play me a song. That's not the idea.
Yeah, because in a lot of user interfaces, you would see sort of like a virtual assistant that looks like a human. And it's been programmed to respond in certain ways. But this is not that.
This is that, but it actually looks like a human. It's modeled around a human, maybe behind a screen. So what happens is that, let's say you have to teach language to somebody who's completely illiterate, is maybe 70 years old. Asking that person to maybe fiddle with a computer will be difficult, right? But if it has to be a virtual, something that looks human, talks human, emotes human, it will be easier to maybe break that barrier of technology. So I think that's where it will work. It'll also work in where you are alone and you don't have anybody to talk to. You have a person who you can talk to, even though it's not an actual person. Those are the use cases, right? And let's say one use case Pranav was talking about is that there is a late night breaking news and a TV channel does not have an anchor. So the neon does it because it looks like that anchor who's sleeping somewhere. So that is the virtual use case for something like this. But hold on. The fact is that you still have only the virtualization available right now. The emotions and the intelligence will come later with the technology that the Star Labs, which has created this, is working on. The technology is called Spectra. Spectra is maybe 18 months away, maybe 2 years away, but it's certainly not available right now.
So what advantages will that give?
So that will let neons go autonomous. That is where it's different from virtual, in the sense that autonomous means they can talk to you on their own. They can emote based on what the conversation is. They can smile, they can cry, they will be able to do all that stuff on their own. They will learn and react.
That seems something
Scary,
out of
Black Mirror. Yeah,
that seems like something out of a science fiction movie.
Yeah, but that's exactly what they're working on.
What kind of concerns do they have regarding that? Are there any?
So they have tried to sort of allay the concerns by saying that, hey, you're not going to see an army of neons interacting with themselves and planning to take over the world. Because
which kind of happened at the end of the movie Her, if you've seen it.
Yeah. So the idea here is that each neon, so if you have a neon, that neon knows only you, learns from you, and is an extension of you. So it's in a loop with you. So if your friends are that neon's friends, but that neon does not make friends of its own, right? Because it's not interacting with people. If it interacts with people, it will learn that person. And, so only what is exposed to it will be its learning.
So did you happen to see a neon at CES? What did it look like in real life?
It looks like whoever it's modeled on, right? So the first neon he was saying was modeled on one of his friends and who was also working on the project.
And what are the challenges that the company is facing right now in terms of where they want this project going?
So CES, it's the world's largest tech show, is also the place where a lot of concepts come. So I would say this is still a concept. There is a bit of show and tell, a show and tell because you want partners to come in. Maybe you don't have a lot of technologies needed to take it to where you want it to. So that's where maybe you're looking for a Google or a Baidu or some of these big tech giants to sort of back you with something, some data or some of the stuff that you don't have, right? And that's why I think they came to CES and showcased it. So Pranav says that this entire concept is 4 months old. Nothing in CS would have been 4 months old.
Oh.
So for them to come so early in their product cycle to say, and there is no product per se, they're again selling a concept. So I think it's early days. We have to see. It's an interesting concept. We don't know how it's going to turn out. It could have some very interesting use cases, right? You would go to a bank, you would not wait in a queue because there are 100 neons there waiting to answer your queries and be more human about it. So there are ways where it can be used. But I'm not sure about whether it's something that's really going to go the path.
You were listening to 3 Things by the Indian Express. Today's show, as always, was edited and mixed by our producer, Joshua Thomas. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it. Share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet us at Express Audio and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.